Well, folks, next up we have Tobias Schwartz from Audisto. As you guys know, Audisto is our fabulous coffee sponsor today, so the coffee break you just enjoyed was courtesy of them. A few weeks ago, or actually months ago at this point, Paul Shapiro had seen Audisto's pagination guide and was super, super impressed. So we had to invite them today to give their talk, The Ultimate Pagination for SEO. So everyone, let's welcome Tobias.
Hi. So I want to talk to you about the ultimate pagination, and as you can probably see, this time of year for me, the ultimate pagination comes in form of an advent calendar, but this is not what helps us for the rest of the year. So we obviously need something else. And I've looked at various paginations over the last couple of years, and they are so different, it's always a compromise between usability, structure, and design. And I wondered, so why did people choose to use one or another pagination? What are the upsides, what are the downsides of using one or another? And we decided that we want to test it. So over the next couple of minutes, I will first tell you some general things about pagination and what are the problems using it. Then we will go over our research. We will look at the key learnings we had from the research. And at the end, I will show you some best practice examples. So let's start. So the general thing with pagination is that when you have long lists, you can't put all the items on a single page. So if you do that, then it will have a lot of HTML. It will become slow. So we get into trouble, we have usability issues, people can't reach the bottom of the page if you do infinite scrolling and so on. So usually the solution is that we divide stuff up and put it onto separate pages. So those pages hold a lot less content and it's way faster. But you need to be careful with this. It's not always true. Because if you have a very long pagination, and it's a dynamic one, then you have to actually build the whole list into memory first to display the last pagination page. So if you have a lot of pagination pages, the last pagination page is usually quite slow. So you want to kind of limit it. And then we have the SEO problems with pagination. So as an SEO, I want to get all the items indexed. So I use pagination because there's no better structure to display the stuff. And if the pagination isn't perfect, not all of it gets crawled. So we might end up with some pagination pages that aren't crawled at all. And of course, this will mean that the item pages can't be crawled at all either because the search engine simply doesn't know a link to those. And even if there are links, sometimes the search engine thinks the pages are irrelevant or not strong enough, so they will not be crawled either. And we can look at a thing from the past. It's an older patent from Google. It's a patent for the search engine scheduler. And this is something search engines have or crawlers have because they have to deal with an unlimited number of URLs. So in general, there's always someone who built the infinite pagination, the infinite calendar, or generated trillions of URLs to use it for facetted search. So what search engines do is they select a number of URLs, then they compute some scores, which probably used to be PageRank in the past, and then they select everything above a certain threshold for crawling. And to give you a better example of this, we can use a number of items. Then we can see that there are different links with different strength. We can also calculate some kind of scores, and everything above a certain threshold will then be crawled and probably indexed, and everything below this threshold won't be crawled and won't be indexed. And this is something we do a lot. So we are a crawling tool. What we do is we crawl large websites up to 50 million URLs, and we calculate PageRank and ChiRank onto all those URLs so we can identify the relevant items. And at some point we thought, why not set up test cases where we test different pagination structures against each other and see what we can learn. And that's exactly what we did. So let's talk about the test setup a little bit. And because we have not so much time, we will just start with the first pagination. So what we did for the test setup is we took 100 pagination pages. We put 20 items on every single pagination page. So we ended up with a total of 2,100 pages. And then we, from looking at different paginations, we've seen that all of the paginations have some things in common. So one thing is that you can always go to the next and the previous page. If that's not true, then yeah, it's a broken pagination. And I've also seen paginations where that wasn't really possible. And the next one is that usually all the pagination pages link back to the first pagination page. This is due to the usage of breadcrumb navigation. So nowadays, you should use breadcrumb navigation because it's highlighted in the search snippets. You get an incredible uplift from the better snippet. So almost everyone does it. So also a thing we found. And all the items usually also link back to the first pagination page, also because of the breadcrumb navigation. And this makes the first pagination page the strongest page in all of the paginations we observed. And this is fine, this is totally fine. Yeah, and now the first pagination. This is a basic pagination, so it's the one where you can only go to the next page and to the previous page. And we will see a lot more slides that look like this, so let's quickly explain it. The orange pagination pages, those are the ones that are the characteristics for this pagination type, and the underlined one is the page we're currently on. So if we have a pagination like this, a basic pagination, and we can only go one page forward and one way backward, then we will end up with this for the level architecture. So on the left side, you can see the levels for the pagination pages, and on the right side for the item pages. So we will end up with 100 levels of depth for this basic pagination in this test setup, which is really, really bad, because most of the users stop right here. If you look at web analytics for such a pagination, you will recognize that most of the users only access the first 3 to 5 pages, pagination pages, and stop beyond that. So all of the other items are basically lost for the user. He can't really access it. So we need something better. And what we can also do is we can look and visualize PageRank and ChiRank. And as you can see here, the strongest pages are at the front. And this is due to the stuff previously described. Everything links back to the first pagination page, and this is a good thing. And a bad thing is that the best hubs are at the end. So what it actually means is that imagine you want to go from the first pagination page to the deepest element, you have to do 100 clicks. But if you're on the last pagination page, you can do a single click to end up on the first page, do 50 clicks to the middle, and you can also go 50 clicks to the middle from the left. So the last pagination page makes this pagination way better accessible than the first pagination page. And this is bad, because what we want is we want to have the first pagination page to make everything accessible as well as possible. Because usually you have a category structure, and you want, this is the entry point. Yeah, and what we also did is we collected information for the various pagination types. Let's quickly explain this. So we looked at the maximum depth for the pages. Then we looked at the sum of the PageRank and the ChiRank value on the different types. And we have the number of relevant pagination pages and item pages in terms of SEO. And what we did there is we looked at various paginations. We took the one that evenly distributed PageRank across most of the items, and we said this is our threshold. So we want to see in the other pagination types how many pagination and item pages do better than that. So in this case, only 4 of the pagination pages were better than the best one we observed, and only 60 of the item pages, which is really, really bad. So let's look at the key findings from the different paginations we looked at. So what you often see is that people link to the last pagination page. And this means that the last pagination page and the first pagination page is always reachable with a single click. And what this actually does, it cuts the whole level architecture into half. So we only have 50 levels now, or 51 levels. And this is really bad, because now the best hubs are in the middle, which is still not good, and the strong pages are at the end as well. And you need to be aware that whenever you have a pagination, it's usually an ordered list. So the relevant content is at the front. If you're an online shop, you probably have some business criteria to sort the stuff. So the best-selling products go to the front. And you don't want to make it easy for the user to access the last page because those are the most irrelevant items. You really want to keep the user at the front. So never link to the last pagination page if you can avoid it for an ordered list. The next one we looked at is neighbors. So it actually means that instead of having just the previous and the next one, we allow the user to skip a couple of pages. And if we look at the level architecture for that, you can see that we now have more pages on the same level. This is because we discover multiple pagination pages and item pages at the same point then. And then there's the fixed block. This is kind of, you have to explain it. So what it actually is, it's a list of 10 pagination pages. And this list is always the same, no matter on which pagination page you are. So it looks the same on page 21. It looks the same on page 30 for this one. But it changes. You can access the next block from the first page of the block and from the last page of the block. This is good to keep the user on the front. For example, if you have want to keep the user on the first 5 or 10 pages or something like that, you can use a pagination like the fixed block. But it's really hard for the user to understand how he can go to page 20, 50 or something like that. And it looks quite similar to the neighbors navigation, so there's not much change. Then we have the fixed block. The fixed steps. So what it does, it links every 20th page here. And if we do so, then we get a lot of spikes. And this is really bad, because it would mean that we would need to have to put our relevant content onto those pages. And this is really hard to do and totally counterintuitive for the user. So we usually put our relevant pages at the front. So nothing we should use. Then we have logarithmic pagination. We've seen this a lot. There were lots of blog posts and stuff like that. It was for some time kind of the holy grail of pagination. And the steps are calculated in a way that the distance increases towards the end. So if you look at the 24 and go to the left, the step size is 3, then it's 5, then it's 6, then it's 9. So it's hard for the user to understand this, and it changes on every single page. So because it's calculated for every single page. And if we do that, we can see that we have an incredibly low amount of levels here. We only have 4 levels now, which is really, really good because it evenly distributes the page rank across most of the pages. But we got a lot of spikes here, small little spikes in the pagination in the level graph. And it's hard for the user to understand what's the fastest way to get to a particular page. And if we look at the page rank and chi rank distribution, we still have a lot of spikes. We would need to place our relevant items there, and the best hubs are at the end. So also not a very good pagination. And then we found this one. We called it a ghost block because when we first saw it, the first line of the pagination was clearly visible and the second line was grayed out. So really hard to read for the user. It was obviously meant for the search engine. And it's designed in a way, the first line is actually a fixed block as we've seen it before. And the second one is a block that has the formula current page multiplied by 10 plus 1 for the first page. And it changes on every single page. And it's hard to use because the 2 lines are totally, there's no connection between them, at least not for pages beyond 2. But on the first page, this is actually usable because then it links the first 20 pages, pagination pages, which is quite good. And the interesting thing here is that we end up with only 3 levels in the level architecture, so a really flat one. And if we look at the page rank and the chi rank, then we find the strongest pages at the front. And it was the only pagination we looked at where the hubs were also at the front. So at least for a search engine, this is a really good pagination if you have a lot of even items or similar items of similar relevancy. Then you could probably use the ghost block to make all of them well accessible for the search engine. Yeah. And then here is the comparison table. So you can see that we have the different paginations with different numbers of relevant pages. So the ghost block was the best one in this case. Depending on your setup, you might choose one or another. You should never link to the last pagination page. You probably want to avoid all the pagination types that result in spikes at random pages. The rest paginations are quite fine. Now, how can we take this and put it into action? Let's look at 3 best practice examples. So the first one is pagination for category trees. We see this a lot, for example, in online shops. You have a category. In this case, we have 9 levels of pagination. And if we link an item from the last pagination page, it will be level 10. But what we can do is we can add subcategories. And if we evenly distribute the items into 2 subcategories, we will only end up with 5 pagination pages in each subcategory. So the item will now be reachable within 6 levels. And this means that we don't need those pages anymore because they don't add any value for the discovery of the content. And if you get rid of them, you will redistribute the internal page rank, you may make everything else stronger, and you will also see an uplift in sales probably because if the user is forced to go into a subcategory, he's deeper in the conversion funnel, so it's more likely that he will convert. So in general, it's a good idea to have pagination on the deepest level, so as long as you need it. But on the higher levels of a category tree, just limit the pagination to 3 or 5 pages because most of the users access the first 3 to 5 pages anyway, and you can cut out a lot of levels in between. Then we have pagination for threads and discussions, and this is way different. So in a pagination of a discussion, the first pagination page defines the topic. The recent discussion is on the last pagination page, so we obviously need this, need both of them. So if you have a discussion and you don't link to the last pagination page, then it's also flawed. And the good answers are somewhere in between. And if you have a discussion, a bulletin board or something like that, you should really start collecting information about where the important answers and the good answers are, because this would enable you to directly link to the pagination pages that hold relevant information for the user. So you get more satisfied users. The users will usually do way more impressions and interact way more with your website. And then the last one, it's pagination for chronological content. So if we have a news website, we usually have this kind of type of content, and the newest items usually go on the first pagination page. But this is bad because newest items on the first, oldest items on the highest one, and it means that if you write new content, the content moves to the second, to the third, to the fourth pagination page. So all the pagination pages change. All of them have to be recrawled and re-evaluated. And this eats up a lot of crawl budget, especially on larger websites. And what we can do is we can just turn the pagination around. So why not have the first pagination page be the one with the highest number, and the oldest items go on the pagination with the lowest number? Of course, this introduces another problem. In this case, we could end up with a single item on the page 100, which would be a total nightmare in terms of usability. But we can easily work around this by balancing the number of items for the first couple of pagination pages. So, for example, just display 20 to 25 instead of 20. And we then open up a new pagination page whenever we have enough items to fill a new pagination page. And this will make the older pagination pages totally stable. We will never have to change them at all. So they need rarely to be crawled, and we free a lot of crawl budget. Yeah, and that's about it.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Tobias. Do we have any questions for Tobias? So hands up. Anyone? Anyone? Oh, here we come.
Do you have some example pages that have the pagination flipped around?
Yeah.
Some content sites you could share?
There are bulletin boards, for example, in Germany. There's a forum that for cars and stuff like that called Motor Talk. It's actually Europe's biggest car bulletin board. And they have this set up with flipped around pagination. They have over 20 million topics. So it was really an incredible uplift for this.
We have one more down here.
Can you give suggestions for page titles for paginated pages?
Yeah, for page titles, I would always add the title to the page, so the number of the pagination to the page, because I'm not sure if you're aware of that. I think last year or 2 years ago, John Miller told that if you have pagination pages set to no index, for example, and you do it for long term, then Google might stop crawling those pages because they think it's irrelevant content. And so it's a good practice to set pagination pages to index. And if you do so, then you obviously want it to be somehow different, that multiple pagination pages can show up in search. And the easiest way to do so is just add the number to the pagination, to the title and the meta description. And you can also probably play around with keywords if you want.
Any other questions, folks? Anything else for Tobias? No? Okay, well, wonderful. Let's give him a big round of applause. Thank you so much.
Thank you.